our topic of discussion today is redefining the nightlife economy of India and Bombay in specific. And today I'm joined with some extremely exciting panelists, my friends, and people who I've spent a lot of time with individually and as a group, just talking and discussing about what Mumbai's been up to. Everyone's been to their bars, I'm sure most of you all have, and everyone in Bombay really looks up to all these guys for the kind of work they do. So before wasting further time, we will just jump into them giving all of us a one-liner or two-liners max about what they do and introducing their bars to us. So I'm just going to pass on the mic and then we can go one by one.
We go with ladies first.
Sharon, we can start with you.
Okay. Hi guys, good evening. This is Sharon Moshtori. I own a bar in Bandra called 1633. Those who have not heard, love to see you there. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Ishan Behel. I own a brand called 145. We've got 5 outlets across India.
Hi guys, I'm Dishant Pritamani and we run the Daily across Mumbai and Pune and Suki, this Japanese Pan-Asian restaurant, and now the Second House and Cafe Lento. So see you somewhere in one of these places.
Hi, I'm Saisha. I'm from Aspect Hospitality. We have 12 brands across restaurants and bars in Mumbai, Hyderabad, and Bangalore. Please visit.
I am Kripesh Sangvi. I'm CEO of Colossal Hospitality, which runs brands like Epitome, Kind Cafe, and few more coming up in this Mumbai and Pune.
So can we please have a round of applause for everyone? Thanks, guys. So the broad topic of discussion today is nightlife in Bombay. And on this panel with me are close to about 25 to 30 odd restaurants. If you add Saisha's, then 300. But overall, spaces that most of us visit, most of us really love, and places that we really like to spend our time at. So I am actually going to start with Saisha as the first question. On Saisha, in the year 2025 and approaching peak season time, as we like to call it, the November to February months, what do you see as the DNA of today's consumer who's looking at going out, say, a post 7:30 p.m.? And also, how do you think today is different than what it was 2 or 3 years back?
Hi, everyone. So, needless to say, the culture earlier was very, very different from what it is today. Everybody that I see who are going to bars and enjoying the nightlife in Mumbai want intimate settings, want community-based settings, want experiences. You can't have just generic concepts. And you'll see people are looking for something special wherever they go. They like to see known faces, known people. And that's also very area-centric now. Earlier, people used to travel across from the suburbs to town and the other way around, depending on what the place was, what the concept was. But now you'll see little hubs and lots of people going to the same places, but there has to be a personal connect. There has to be a certain kind of storytelling. There has to be a certain kind of, recall when they feel that, okay, somebody here knows me. So I think that intimate setting, and they're quite evolved as compared to, I think, like today's youngsters are, when I was at their age, I would flock to anywhere anybody was going. But now they know what they want and they want experiences, whether it's a lovely sit down or whether it's a bar experience or whether they're cocktails, they know exactly what they want.
Super. So I'm actually just going to pick up from where Saisha left on Bombay being now divided into pockets and people prefer to stay in their pockets. Someone who's done this really well is 145. I still remember, I think almost a decade back when Kala Ghoda launched, and the first campaign, which is very clear to me, when I visited, they had put out this whole Freak Shakes, right? I think it was this menu and it had really blown up. And since then, Kala Ghoda, then Bandra, then Andheri. So how are you captivating the pockets and how do you end up retaining everyone to keep sort of repeating with the brands? How do you think this is different today when you are now 4 outlets down versus when you launched Kala Ghoda?
So thank you so much. But 145, when we launched 10 years ago, I think it was a very different market when we launched. The Freak Shakes conversation is something that was actually quite interesting, because I remember me and my father going back and forth on it several times, and he felt that there was no value in terms of what we were doing, because at that time it was a relatively more international concept. There wasn't something that really existed out there. I remember in our first month alone, we sold around 5,000 shakes. And I was like, we were very surprised to see that kind of uptake, but I think something different is what struck gold over there. When we started 145, obviously, I think it was, global tapas, just the right price point. And I think one very big element for us was music. So I think, just the music that really hits home with you, makes you feel like it takes you back to your younger days. It makes you feel like, you can just let loose and have a really good time. And another element that we added in with the brand was the pool table. Now, just picking up from what Saisha said, the pool table really encouraged a very community-driven atmosphere at 145. In fact, a lot of people that come in there recurringly because of the pool table, because it gives a sort of a very relaxed, calm, sort of a feeling, which then turns into slightly more upbeat feeling towards the later half of the night. I think as we opened, we sort of progressed and advanced the experience a little bit, but very carefully retaining the DNA of the brand. Because again, carrying on with what Saisha said, I think the consumer today is very experience driven. So you can't just, you need to, I feel like today's consumers are a lot smarter, very well traveled, understand smaller things from music, lighting, transitions, So I think that was the entire idea. As 145 also evolved, we went to evolve the product gradually while maintaining the DNA and sort of localizing it market to market. So if you visit an Andheri branch versus a Kalagoda branch, our menu is fairly different because I feel like the audience over there is very receptive to something which is very different to South Bombay. So I think that was very important in determining our success with the brand across the years.
Super. Thank you. Kripesh, I'm going to go back to a conversation you and me had maybe I think 6-7 years back, where we were sitting and brainstorming for one of your brands, and you mentioned to me that, Pawan, when people go to restaurants, and especially if they're non-vegetarians, you will see the food coming in various different fashions. It's extremely well plated. But when vegetarians have to go out and eat, it's the same paneer, same roti, basics that you get. And you said that that is what I want to change in my brand. I will give them a vegetarian dining experience which they feel that it's world class. And since then, you've been able to build a pure vegetarian. That's the term that we all loosely use, but I think that's worked fantastically well across the formats. A pure vegetarian with a great high energy bar. So can you tell us a little more about the thought process and how you've been able to retain people over a decade between these formats in Bombay and Pune?
See, Bhavan, as we discussed earlier, the concept of people in bars was that if it has alcohol, it has to have non-veg food. But that's what I didn't believe in. As a vegetarian also can have a great bar. Because people today look for an immersive experience. So if I'm giving the same high-end vegetarian food, which was not heard of before, and now people are ready to accept it. So that's what we've been trying to do. Give very good experience with new concepts, chef-driven concept for vegetarian itself. And that's how we are focusing on, and all my places, like whatever I'm going to do is always going to be vegetarian only. So yeah, so that's how I'm focusing on vegetarian and what else can be done through this concept.
Super, thank you. I am next going to jump on to my two favorite Bandra spots, which are the Daily and 1633, spaces that I really like to visit whenever I want to let loose and have a drink. So for Dishant and Sharom, we'll start with Dishant. Can you tell us about your thought process of when you're creating a bar? Of course, you can maybe touch upon 3 or 4 things which are extremely crucial to you, say, when you were starting the Daily as a concept.
I think for me, it was super important to understand who my crowd is. I kind of tend to shy away from any kind of trend. I realized that I am my guest. And the minute you look at yourself as the guest, all I needed to do was impress myself. I think if you walk into a bar, from the minute you walk in to the minute you leave, everything is what you're paying for. I don't think you're paying for product anymore. And the minute you realize that you are not happy with something because you've been to a bar somewhere, then the first thing you start correcting was that. So sadly, I'll give you the real example because 13 years ago when I started Daily, I don't think I knew anything about the bars. But back then, Elbow Room in Bandra was my case study, right? Because something about Elbow Room felt right. Well, most of it felt right, and some parts of it kind of hurt me as a consumer, and I started there. I was like, let me list their pros, let me list their cons, because I know so little that I can't go out and create my own pros and cons. So here is what I'm going to do. I'm going to get the pros to be better and remove the cons, and that is a starting place. So I think that's where I started. And while I was doing that, it was too important that my personality as an individual had to come through as an extension into the restaurant. So I have stopped doing anything that, like it was easy to grow Daily. It was the easiest thing to do, consistently grow Daily into franchises. But that's not who I am. I think by the time I've gone from the age of 30 to 42 right now, I have changed as a person, and so have the brands. So I think I've retained my entire interest in the product per se, and you think from there, you automatically kind of channel your way through. So I think that's been something that I've constantly looked at.
Got it. So, Sharon, we are going to expand on this now. 13 years back is when you started Daily, and congratulations, you completed 1 year now.
Thank you.
Starting in a market like Bandra, which is, a lot of people say it's overcrowded, it's swamped with places, and highest possible density of bars in the city, with every lane having so many of them. What was your thought process and key factors that you considered while opening? And you entered a time where Bandra was at its peak of new spaces opening, right? And also entering in a format like yours, which is, say, I wouldn't say restrictive, but very curated in terms of the number of seaters. So how do you look at that?
So thanks for that, Pawan. You said a lot, so thank you. But to be honest, I think anywhere, let alone Bandra, and our industry being competitive in every single zone in Bombay or the world, the first focus was intent, right? What are you doing this for? Very honestly, there was no I in what we did. There was always about the community, where we are. I'm a bit blessed to be born and brought up in Bandra, which was my, I think, a bigger advantage, where I understand what Bandra really is. It's a community. It's not just a location. It's not, I mean, it's very, very aloof to what the rest of Bombay is. And you see it in your restaurants, right? People come to Bandra with a very different notion in their mind. And then, rather than, putting together, A was focusing only on 5 senses. When you walk into any restaurant, bar, any format today, even a water park, it's how you play with a guest's 5 senses and how you make them feel. Everything is subconscious. It's not just what you eat and drink. It's the first thing you see, the smell, what you hear, how comfortable the air conditioning is. So we paid a lot of attention to that. B, we got in the right people on board. I think we all know our industry, our business is all about people, right? It's not, you can get hardware same everywhere. It's about the software. So getting together a like-minded designer who understands what you want and then let professionals do what they do. We didn't really enforce anything on anyone. Branding was, so that was Shweta who did our design. I give her a lot of credit. She's done a fabulous job. And then at the end of the day, since we were so, I would say restricted, I like the word, I keep saying tight and cramped, we had to manage a certain number of seats, but that was always never the priority, that we need to squeeze in more number of chairs, which also sometimes comes at the back of your mind when you look at ROIs and everything, right? So yeah, getting the right people on board and then bringing the community in. So we really, I mean, anyone who lives in Bandra knows that every guy owns a Honda Activa or a bike. Why? Not that they own the best of cars, but they always navigate through all these gullies of Bandra because there's traffic. Now those are really villages. So we got inspired by the real heart of Bandra, which is these villages that have been there since 400 years, and that's how we inculcated that in our cocktail concept. Our philosophy is all about what the village was. One of them was a rice paddy, so we did a rice cocktail. And that's how we brought all of this into one little space. And I've been blessed to have worked in the industry for so many years in hotels, where we always understand that luxury is not about having everything opulent, it's about having basic needs met, right? So when guests come in, there's a comfort, like a lot of them said on the panel, which is very true. people today are looking for that comfort and being recognized and getting what they want. I don't think anyone anymore is looking at what fancy glass you serve me in or is there smoke coming out of something. I think that's passé. And those are all trends that come and go. But the real truth is in just making people feel at home. Come as you are, be yourself, eat. You don't want to drink, have a meal, it's okay. No one's looking at you, no one's judging you, you're just yourself. Have a conversation, you have no one to talk to, the bartenders, I'll talk to you if you're a girl. So I'm joking. So that's how we came up with the whole thing. And even the name is geolocal, right? We're on the junction of the 16th and 33rd road. So that's how all of this was born. And yeah, we were blessed to have a fabulous team. Yeah? I mean, that's one of the biggest blessings.
So a follow-up question to that, do you think consumers today are more brand loyal or looking out for newer experiences while making their nightlife choices?
So one is everyone's going out a lot. So they have, if they go out thrice a week, they'll go to their spot once, and the other 2 days they'll experiment also. I mean, everyone wants to see new places, right? And people are doing a fabulous job today in all over with what they're trying, what they're bringing on the table. So people are experiencing, but like I say, they might come for a drink to their favorite spot and then go somewhere else. At the end of the day, it's like where they feel at home. So if you can create that atmosphere, people are doing both. So I don't think that's anything wrong in what's happening today.
Got it. Ishan, can we carry forward this to you as well? Talk about Bombay and even Gurgaon now on the experience-led or brand loyalty question.
So for 145, I feel like we do have people coming in a bit more frequently. So I guess because of we've invested now in the last 10 years, I feel like we do have a pretty strong community and we have a lot of these community managers also. So for each outlet, we have a sort of a community face, and his entire responsibility and his role will be to basically be the face of that unit, right? Talk about that, make people feel like it's a second home, which is absolutely correct, I think people are looking for a space that they feel comfortable in, and I will see the same faces, especially in an outlet like Kalagoda, which opened 10 years ago. I will see the same guys there every single day, and I will ask them, I cannot understand how you come here every single day. Like, they are there as much as I am there. And, I'm obviously very grateful for them. But I do think that there is a sense of brand loyalty. I do think that people, it's basically brand loyalty merged with comfort, right? I'm coming there, I know the staff, I know everybody. It's just the way I want it, it's how I want it, and, there's a sense of comfort. And so because of that, the brand loyalty and the comfort for the brand are interlinked over there. The experience with Bombay and Gurgaon on the whole has been pretty different. I think 145 is a pretty well-recognized name in Bombay. Most people have heard about the brand or have visited one of the branches. In Gurgaon, I feel like in Delhi, it's better known. In Gurgaon, we took a little bit of time for people to become for our brand to become better established out there, is how I would put it. And I think we've finally been able to reach that benchmark now. But we're still in the process of community building over there, because I still feel like people are, in a market like Cyberab, which is where we're present, there are almost 150 restaurants. So coming back to what you said, there is so much competition in terms of the fact that I wouldn't say it's competition, I'd say that there are options from a consumer's perspective, and I've seen people there less frequently. Like, I'll see a guy out there maximum once a week, or once in 2 weeks, because they've got 100 other options which are walking distance. So they're saying, you know what, we'll try something else different, So I do see that slight difference between Bombay and Gurgaon, but perhaps because the brand is better established in Bombay.
Dishant, you're at the center of community building across all your spaces. And like Sharum and Ishan both, put their points across of brand loyalty versus experience driven. How are you looking at this across different markets? And especially talk about what are you looking at in Goa?
I don't think these two things exist separately. I think they coexist. To say that brand loyalty exists and experience does not, I think we're now in an experiential market, that's period. Your first experience of the space will build brand loyalty. So I think one flows into the other. What has been my experience with Goa is I think it's the toughest market I have worked in till date. And hence it requires 200% of me. Also, the community there is extremely strong. And they are more driven by emotion than product. So you have to win them in a whole different way. And honestly, I feel like I'm 13 years old in this industry, but it just slaps me in the face and starts teaching me from scratch, right? You think you know it, but you absolutely don't. And it's amazing how your placement and timing in life is so important that I may end up doing the same product, or a friend of mine has done a same product in a similar area and completely failed, and it actually works for you, and you scratch your head thinking, what just happened here? But I really feel like if you're nimble enough to stay on the ground, which I think you do like fucking amazingly, then I think that kind of changes the game. It allows you to pivot when you have to pivot. It allows you to stay the same when you have to stay the same. It really allows you to kind of, I think most restaurants can achieve to be, like I call it like an ice cream, but the cherry on top is the finishing, right? And I think that's what he does. And I believe in doing that a lot, where I'm standing there the whole day. Even if it's a 30-seater restaurant, I'll be there. So I really think that that's the one thing that has kind of led from the experience into the loyalty, and then now the loyalty kind of sticks around.
Fair. Saisha, how are you guys looking at this more from a corporate standpoint, where it becomes impossible to physically be present because of the scale you operate at? So how are you guys looking at this, and how are you solving for this?
So actually, we've been blessed with both kind of spaces. One that have a lot of brand loyalty, like Radio Bar, like Copa, Nom Nom, Silver Beach. These are all, I mean, I see the same faces I saw 13 years back, 14 years back. Now they come with their kids, they come with their families. And then we have newer brands which are very, they're fresh, but we followed a very, I would say, a very clear direction that we wanted to be very experience driven. So whether it's Brunch and Cake or whether it's Opa, they're different. They bring something to the city that you will not be able to get elsewhere, right? So we need to have a very clear idea of which direction you're headed in. So we have to be clear in our heads first. You know, I would say that is most important, because what you think is what actually people see, right? So we are still enjoying the same guests and you know, enjoying the good times with a Radio and a Copa, because we've built that brand loyalty from the days where all of us could be on the floor. And today when we're not on the floor, it's still the same, because in the guest's mind, for them, the emotion attached to it is it's home, right? So we've been very blessed with that, and we've also been blessed that we have a lot of our old team. So that really helps. Known faces automatically brings out the same emotion within a guest, right? I mean, I would say the core team 14 years back, I would say 80% is still the same, you know? So that's not just the corporate team. I would say the managers, the chefs, everybody's the same. So that, I think, makes a huge difference for us, for our older brands. And for the newer ones, we're building on experience, because times have changed and people want good experiences, different experiences, which transport them to somewhere they can't be. So we've now changed our path, but we enjoy a bit of both, honestly.
Super. So, Kripesh, again, I think you and Jigar are pretty much at the center of the community you've built around your brands. Can you tell us about deep diving into the whole vegetarian nightlife economy in Bombay, and again, brand loyalty or customer-led experiences that you sort of push for?
So again, it's all about community building, how you build the connection. Now, as everybody will agree with me, guest now wants to go to a place where they feel at home. You know, where they see that, okay, I know the manager, once you get in, the captains, everybody's greeting them right from the desk till the enter till the from the DJs, everybody knows them. So that's how you make them feel at home. Now with vegetarian concepts also, everybody is now looking forward to chef-driven concepts, which was not initially available or not, somebody was not concentrating or never thought of. So that's how we are trying to build now. That's how we are trying to get to the market now.
Got it. Okay, so for segment 2 of this conversation, we are going to touch upon 3 very important things. First is the changing cocktail culture in Bombay. Number 2 is how is everyone adapting to technology within their restaurants. And number 3 is something that I'm extremely interested in is the unit economics. So let's deep dive into these 3 things. Dishant, you want to start about, just tell us about the changing cocktail culture, how you're adapting to it, how are your menus changing, how are you looking at this whole culture that's brewing in Bombay?
I'd like to start with the fact that I think the industry is following a trend, and the trend is troubling me. I think we are so obsessively focusing on technique that we are forgetting that we are here for the taste. And I think this is my biggest concern. But I was the same. I think 6 years ago, I was following trends. I was seeing what's happening. And somewhere, we got lost, right? We got lost in this clarification, fat washing, and making the process complicated enough to price your drink at 1,500 rupees. And nobody's talking to the guest that, hey, are you enjoying this? Because my bartender is loving it. But who else is really loving it? Nobody. And then it becomes a whole monkey see, monkey do, because this is our environment, right? This is who we are. If I don't have a 800 rupee glass with a 50 rupees block ice with that fat washed, then people won't like me. We need to cut that. We need to cut that crap. And I really think that that's the one thing I would tell. I'm completely running away from it. I think something like a clarification needs to be done when you have a dark drink. Say, for example, you're giving me a Kala Khatta and you clarify it and you give it to me. It blows my mind. It's transparent. Yay. But clarifying everything on the menu for the sake of it is for what, right? Like you add malic acid, you're making it complicated. So the one thing I'm definitely constantly watching out for is let's not do something for the sake of it, right? The customer is conscious enough to say, I got 3 sips from that drink and you charge me 1,000. And here I'm like, listen, but it took me 20 hours to make that drink, overnight batching. Your problem, right? Your problem. Who asked you to do that? So I think right now something super interesting I'm doing is we've built a lab in Goa. It's a 350 square feet, nice lab, loaded up with equipment, kind of a space away for the bartenders and mixologists. One rule of the lab is until I ask their permission, I'm not allowed inside. It's their safe space, right? That's where we've started. That's a start. The conversation is constant. Most of our mixologists have not traveled, right? Where does the idea of flavor come from? It comes from experiencing or exposure. I'm exposed, I'm experienced, but that poor guy has been to 2 cities, not any country, not understanding what he's doing. He's looking at an international bartender doing a technique with a mind, but he's not understanding that mind. So every mixologist is now putting out a technique that everybody is blindly following. So the new thing we've done, and I don't know how many people are doing it, but I am thoroughly enjoying it, is that we've involved our chef in our lab. My boys, they do the technique, and chef does the flavor. Chef learns the technique, and the boys learn the flavor. And now, it's been 4.5 months. There's no pressure to remove a menu immediately. Zero pressure. It takes time. It's okay. Take your time. I'm anyways, I call myself a snail in an industry which is so fast, right? We're slowly doing it, but I think what we can come up with, hopefully by the end of it, will resonate with me. I'll be able to impress myself out of it, and then hopefully I feel everyone loves it. So I feel that's the approach we're taking.
Super. Ishan, can we hop onto you next on this?
So I actually have a very similar viewpoint to Dishant on this because with 145 actually we haven't given in to the trend. We aren't doing any complicated infusions that are left overnight, etc., etc. We've explored the avenue, but we've basically decided to keep it very simple, straightforward, and taste. That's it, basically, and actually works really well for us. It helps us price our drinks in terms of we've got good price variety as well. So if you have a person come in and they don't want to have a drink for $1,000, you've got an option for around $600, $650. So what happens is that there are good price variants, and we're very clear about one thing. Our objective is it's got to taste great. That's it. It doesn't have an overly complicated method that goes behind the scenes in making it. That being said, I do see the value in terms of what is happening, because I recently visited Bangkok and I went to some of the top bars over there, and what they are doing over there is incredible. I mean, I've had a absolutely clarified drink which was mango sticky rice, right? And I was just blown. Like, it tasted exactly like mango sticky rice, and it was absolutely clear. And I'm like, okay, that's the value. That's it right there. But the kind of precision that they are doing it with is because of the global exposure that they have, right? Because they have traveled around the world, because those guys have done takeovers from South America to, all the areas in Asia. They've even come to India and see what they're doing, but they've got that exposure. So as a result of that, they're able to do it with a level of finesse, which then is appreciated by both ends, the management as well as the customer. So I do see some value in that, and we are actually currently working on a new brand which is slated to launch next year, and we are working on playing a little bit with some infusions for that brand, but with the intent that we want a team behind it that has the global exposure, that has the understanding in terms of the merit that we are providing, because I think it's very, very important.
Super. Sharom, if you want to enlighten us.
Yes, I'll add to that. Actually, I agree with Dishant and Ishan on many points, but honestly, there's always a yin and a yang, right? So one is focusing on what's trending, which even your bartenders are aspirational. They're seeing 10 other people and they want to learn, they want to grow. So yeah, travel is a must, research is a must. Understanding the whole ideas of balancing a cocktail. It's not about a technique only. Now, like you clarify something, the first thing in your mind is you're going to lose alcohol, you're going to lose spirit. Am I giving you a balanced drink? Or is it tasting like a mocktail? So let them do that. Let them have their freedom. But when it comes to your menu, like for example, how many of these cocktails are made in front of you? They're just pre-batched, poured on ice, thank you, and out. So there's no showmanship. So you got to balance that. That's what we are doing. And the highest selling cocktail, we sell 2,500 picantes a month. It's made fresh, muddled in front of you, served and given to a guest. So there's an experience to it. And we also have our cocktails that are specialty ones, 6 of them. We've given them their spot on the menu because that's revolving around our philosophy. Not too much technique driven, more ingredient driven. There's one technique in all of them. So we had this like a science project, like an Excel sheet. What's the glass, what's the ice, what's the spirit? So 6 different spirits, 6 different ingredients, 6 different ideas, 6 different villages. Everything came into one. And then the highest selling, like I said, Picante, Espresso Martini, and Negroni, your classics. And what is a cocktail, right? It's all coming from classics, having variations to it. So I think it's just about evolving with time. Even if you see the other Eastern countries, they're copying us. They're doing Indian ingredient in most of their cocktails, and we are trying to copy them. So the idea is to be inspired and not copy. The idea is to figure something out. It's a great thing to involve a chef because they understand flavors. But like I say, even mixologists are like chefs, right? They are proper talent. They have their craft talent. So I think it's just about them understanding what they're doing and balancing it. So that's where it all comes from. I think we're on the same page on that. And he started making his own ice now. Talking about ice.
Sasha, what do you want to weigh in?
So, honestly, I think at none of our places we follow any trends, so to say. But what we try to do is give the whole experience. So, for example, I'll go back to Opa, right? I want to transport them to Greece. So, I have to tie down every element, whether it's food, it's cocktails, it's the performance, everything to the basic concept and theme. And that's, I think, going back to when I said if you have the direction clear in your head, that's what translates. So when I'm in the process of giving them that entire Greek experience, then of course some of my cocktails are, Greek ingredient inspired, and we give them a taste of Greece. And that's the inspiration. You know, similarly, if we do Coconut Boy, so we have some Goan inspiration cocktails. So I think that's the direction we take rather than following a limited trend that comes and goes and complicate things. We just want to be honest to the concept end to end. It's fairly simple. And if you know, the consumer is very, very smart today. They are exposed. They know what is an honest effort versus a gimmick. I think it's very, very, very easy to see that difference.
Right. Okay, so we are going to jump upon the AI technology. Just before that, we'll check with Kripesh on his cocktail program and then.
Yeah, so my team, the brief is clear. We don't try to copy any trend. My team brief is clear. Give what the customer wants, not sell something what you want to. You make, be it food or cocktail, give classic or something simple which it is acceptable. And people in the end should enjoy the drink of food. That's about it. Not too much fancy drama, not too much glamour, nothing. Give what they want.
Super. Thank you. Dishant, AI in restaurants. You and me had a long chat about how AI was used to sort of get the second house together, from including the art and the artwork. So.
I think a lot of people, when you pitch AI to them, they think that you're using AI in the restaurant to assist your operations. But I think I've done the opposite. I think we've used AI in our design and design alone and just used it as a guest experience. I think it was one of the toughest and most interesting things I've done. A restaurant that should have taken 6 months to build took 2 years. But the journey to learn something new has been my hook, to be honest. And what we actually did, Second House might be the world's first AI built restaurant. I'm not sure, but I know that nobody, or I've looked enough and not found somebody doing it, at least not in the design phase. And I feel like we kind of lent in so much into it that it allows us to provide such immersive experience to our guests. And for people who don't want it, it doesn't exist, right? It's just background. But for people who want it, it can actually blow your mind. So what we've done is, from our artworks to our paintings, now to immersive experiences, and to even some part of the construction. We've actually rebuilt a lot of our interiors through AI. Just to give you an example, the second house is a 100-year-old house. I kind of figured out how to get the pictures of this house from 80 years ago. And I kind of saw the old house, and it had a lot of leakages in the corner. So there was a simple AI app in which I could map the entire leakage, the way it used to exist in that house, and create a stencil out of it, put this stencil in my actual new place, and ask the contractor to recreate it. Now, it got recreated as a leakage, but it was done through AI. So you can, like, I want to now believe that, especially with designers that exist, I know Keith is somewhere here and he's probably listening, that AI is your horse and you are a horse rider. From making something as simple as a light, we've made all our lights and our furniture on AI and then gone into production. It's never been done. The process is complicated as hell, but once it comes out, it is one of one. Each light and each table and each chair at Second House is one of one because we've created it on AI, then taken it to a light manufacturer and said create it, who's taken 4 or 5 molds to get it right, and then we've gotten it. So yes, it's expensive, it's much more time consuming, but somehow the joy of creation is pretty outstanding. Yeah.
Super. Anyone else would want to weigh in on how they are utilizing AI or any other immersive technology within their brands?
So I think at this point, we are using AI, but to the point where it helps us understand trends. It helps me a lot in the marketing and communications department, where we kind of analyze what others are doing, more in research, development, understanding what's happening around the world, because you need information quick. Everything is so fast now, and opportunities come and go, in a matter of seconds. So to kind of get that information faster, to be more time and cost effective, to be able to catch up with every current thing that's happening. I think I personally use it, and everyone in the team uses it a lot, from a very simple but very useful, as a very useful tool for a lot of research and understanding what has happened. You can't be in every part of every country at all times, right? So it really helps put a lot of things into perspective.
Right.
So I'll just add to that. There's two ways to use or look at AI, like even Dishant said. It's to aid an operation, not to replace anything physical. Now, for example, we have Chris sitting here. He's from our social media team. He uses AI in social media. Certain artwork, putting 50 people holding a picante. I say, how do you get that? And then I look back at the pictures. Okay, it's AI. So these things are fine, but at the end of the day, the warmth and the touch that you can do physically through a human being, it's about giving you ideas to work through your support parts more than operationally. So that's where we're coming in.
I'll just add to this really quickly. We're actually working with an interesting company that is still in the prototype phase, but basically what they have is they have a tab, and we give it to all our servers at the end of the meal, and it records the conversation between the server and the guest, and it will basically send the entire transcript to me on a dashboard, basically, which I'm able to access every morning. And the AI software that's there generates an overall review in terms of stars. So I don't actually have to go through all of them. I'll go through the ones that, for example, are rated lowest. And that, I think, really helps me a lot, because there, if there's something that hasn't come to my attention through my team, I'm immediately able to sort of siphon that out very quickly and see, like somebody came in yesterday, there were 2 complaints on espresso martini, for example, and immediately, like, I can say that, okay, there was a complaint in Andheri, there's a complaint in Kalagoda, I know there's an issue out here, let me get into it. So I feel like that's been quite helpful.
This is a bad idea for married men, huh? You hear the whole conversation.
Okay. We have the last 5 minutes to end this. I had this one. Are we through?
I think we can wrap. We
We
also
don't
have
have time.
awards coming after this. So, still, if you want to take a last question, please go ahead.
So the last question ideally we had for Dishant and Sharon, which was saved. If you guys are elected the night mayor of Mumbai, couple of things that you guys want to change or sort of add on in policy.
I would
I
sleep.
think
Next year we're going to all campaign for them.
Yeah? I'd sleep. Nightmare, right? No, I'm just joking.
Nightmare.
I'll let
I think
Dishant
firstly, please never select me as a nightmare, because I will just remove too many issues out of it. But I think just categorically breaking it down, I think there are 2 aspects to nightlife. One is the restaurateurs and the other is the system and the administration. If I was made nightlife mayor of Mumbai, I think one of the first things I'd kind of switch around is this criminality dogma around the bars and restaurants, right? If there is any issue, then these are the guys who cause the issue. It contributes, if not in Bombay yet, but it contributes to tourism, it contributes to employment, it contributes a lot to society. But to look at it like it is the worst thing to have happened because you are a drunkard and an ayyash, all that needs to kind of go away. I think that comes from the government. And it comes from, dare I say, that we are Hindus and we're not supposed to do this, and then this entire negative agenda around it, then obviously you're constantly going to struggle to build something like that. Something that you can learn from is in Amsterdam. I mean, I was at Amsterdam dance event and one of my friends got lost because there were 10,000 people, and he was walking back home at 6 a.m., absolutely smashed out of his face. But the cop stopped him and asked him, hey, can I drop you wherever you're going? And then we had a cop visit our house at 6 a.m. We all panicked. We looked out of the window and he came to drop him. I mean, here is an extreme difference between a country doing it right and a country doing it wrong. So I think one thing is to kind of remove this entire negative air around it. We're a part of a social fabric. We help people balance their rat race out. I think that's the role we play. Another part of it is, I think we need to have kind of sections like how top cities like Bangkok and Cape Town and New York do. They have all their hospitality in one area, so you're not disturbing anybody. I really think that should kind of start happening. Easier said than done, I understand, because you don't have these pockets emptily available. But having that done, because I see some of the guests who get bothered, some of the people who stay opposite the Daily or opposite any of our restaurants, they get bothered. They are fair to get bothered, man. If I was them and I had bought a house 20 years ago to live a peaceful life, and now I have all this chaos happening around me. So I'm with them, but I'm also with me. What do I do? Where do I go? I mean, I have a license, like, hi. So I think these two things have to get kind of taken care of. And at third, I think ease of business. I think I would check more, but check the relevant things as opposed to the other things that are not so relevant. So I think these three things I do.
I think he spoke to me earlier and took all the answers away. No, but similar to what he's saying, create pockets, which is very tough in this city. But I keep wondering, we have such lovely seafronts. And every country that has the ocean has no, we have nothing commercial. So why not create a hub? Why is there no walking street in Bombay? You have certain pockets that can be created to walking streets. Okay, there's a parking menace, it can be sorted. So if I were mayor, then you know you would
16th and 33rd Road is now.
absolutely we'd name it after us. So no, but cut to that. I think there's no pocket zone, right? So even this is a challenge with every business you have, and it's also the mentality of the people who are related to it, in authorities in a way, right? They need to see it, right? Like a cop dropping someone home in Amsterdam. The day that happens in this country will be fabulous. So you shouldn't be looked at with that eye rather than looking at supporting the system. So that's what I would do. Very tough. You need a lot of money for that. But that's it.
But super. I think that's all for today.
Yes,
Thank you so much.
please.
Thank you so much, guys,
Thank you,
for being
Pawan.
such
You
wonderful
were great.
panelists.